Hey everyone! Today we're diving into another deeply disturbing case. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to subscribe and stay engaged. It really helps me out and I'd truly appreciate it. Let's get into it. The seductive pull of fame and social media stardom often hides a dark reality. Many people chase popularity online, unaware of the immense pressure that comes with it, from toxic scrutiny and jealousy to mental exhaustion. The biggest cost? The loss of personal space and privacy. Over time, this pressure can lead to anxiety, low self-esteem, and emotional burnout. Fame may not last forever, but its consequences often do. Anastasia Grishman, a young woman from St. Petersburg, known online as Anastasia Grishman, had big dreams of becoming a top influencer. She was determined to succeed, no matter the cost, and in just a few short years, she built a following of over 300,000 across her platforms. She was magnetic, charismatic, eccentric, and full of creative energy. Her online presence was vibrant, authentic, and spoke to thousands. But despite her sparkle and drive, Anastasia's life came to a sudden, heartbreaking end. She had big plans, a fresh start, a new life away from the chaos. But someone she once trusted made sure that future would never come. Anastasia Grishman was born on February 7, 1996, in St. Petersburg. She was the only child her parents had together. Her father struggled with alcoholism and left shortly after she was born, leaving her mother, Elena, to raise her alone. Despite juggling two jobs, Elena constantly fought to keep their heads above water. Anastasia's childhood was difficult. Her father had no involvement in her life, no financial support, no emotional connection. She and her mother lived in a tiny dorm room on the city's outskirts. There wasn't even space for a separate bed. Anastasia slept beside her mother until the age of 12. As she grew older, she still had no personal corner to call her own, no privacy, no space to breathe or reflect. Emotionally, it wore her down. But there was little she could do to change her reality. In the spring of 2008, Elena brought Anastasia to the town of Kolpino, where her ex-mother-in-law lived. There, she left Anastasia in the care of the elderly woman, a grandmother she barely knew. To everyone's surprise, Anastasia and her grandmother bonded quickly. Meanwhile, her father, who lived far away, had no contact with his daughter or his own mother. Although the grandmother's house was modest, it offered something Anastasia had never known: her own bed, and more importantly, her own room. For the first time, she felt a small sense of freedom and comfort. But while she was adjusting to this new life, her mother began to disappear from it. Elena's weekend visits became infrequent. Eventually, she entered a new relationship, remarried, and seemed to leave her past, including her daughter, behind. Anastasia didn't fit into Elena's new family picture. Though she still sent money, Elena's presence became nearly non-existent. Anastasia felt abandoned, disconnected, and emotionally alone. She wrestled with sadness, longing for a place where she truly belonged. Lacking emotional support and love, she turned inward and began expressing her pain through art. She began drawing dark, intense images, vivid reflections of the pain and chaos she felt inside. Her grandmother, sensing this inner struggle, did everything she could to fill the emotional gap left by Anastasia's absent parents. She provided not just shelter and food, but unconditional love, warmth, and support, encouraging her granddaughter's creativity at every turn. She made sure Anastasia had everything she needed: pencils, paints, sketchbooks, to pour her soul into her art. By the age of 15, Anastasia began expressing interest in tattoos and piercings. But instead of scolding her or saying no, her grandmother simply asked, "Will it make you happy?" When Anastasia said yes, she didn't just give her the money. She went with her to the salon. That moment marked the beginning of a dramatic transformation. Anastasia gradually started changing her appearance. She designed her own tattoo sketches, many of which she later had inked onto her skin. She had a deep fascination with Korean pop culture, loved anime, and embraced the vibrant, expressive world of cosplay. She became a regular at comic conventions, skillfully transforming into her favorite characters, bold, striking, and impossible to ignore. Still a teenager, she was already becoming someone others admired for her confidence and style. While still in high school, Anastasia bought her first tattoo machine, a basic one. She began practicing on herself and later on friends, slowly honing her technique. She earned her first personal income through tattooing and quickly started improving, developing real skill and precision. Her designs became more intricate, more polished, her artistic talent clearly shining through. By the time she turned 18, almost no space was left untouched. Her body had become a canvas, covered in ink. Most of the tattoos were her own creations, drawn and applied by her own hand. For the harder-to-reach areas, other tattoo artists helped bring her visions to life. But her artistic self-expression didn't stop there. She'd developed a strong interest in body piercings as well. She had multiple piercings: ears, nose, lip, tongue, navel, and even more intimate ones. Eventually, she began adding facial tattoos and modified her appearance further by enhancing her lips, wearing bold-colored contact lenses, and frequently shifting her fashion style. Anastasia wasn't just interested in art, she was turning herself into art, a living, breathing piece of modern expression. Despite this outward boldness, Anastasia quietly battled deep emotional struggles. She suffered from a severe eating disorder, barely eating and dropping to a dangerously low weight. At one point, her health was on the edge. Though she eventually stabilized her condition, she remained frail and slender. But Anastasia saw beauty in her fragility. Her petite frame allowed her to more convincingly embody her beloved anime and comic book characters. After high school, she made a surprising academic choice. She enrolled in technical college, studying auto mechanics, an unusual path for a young woman. She had long been curious about how machines worked and imagined a future in that field. Alongside her studies, she began learning computer programming and web design, never stopping her pursuit of knowledge. And outside the classroom, she continued working as a tattoo artist in a local studio. Whenever she had time, she painted and drew, constantly creating bold characters and imaginative scenes. At the age of 16, Anastasia created several profiles on popular social media platforms. She began sharing photos of herself, her original artworks, and the tattoos she designed. Her combination of unique style, artistic passion, and a vibrant, unapologetic personality captivated audiences. Her follower count began climbing fast, and she was well on her way to online stardom. Anastasia was a true style chameleon. Her appearance was a striking fusion of gothic fashion and anime aesthetics, and she had a natural gift for storytelling. She spoke openly with her followers, sharing her thoughts, hobbies, creative passions, and dreams, and her authenticity resonated deeply. Many of her viewers, especially younger ones, saw themselves in her pain, in her resilience, and in her journey towards self-expression. They supported her not just with likes and comments, but by becoming part of her growing online community. That community became a safe space, a blend of anime fans, body art lovers, cosplay enthusiasts, and others who connected with her unique worldview. Without even realizing it, Anastasia had become an influencer, someone whose voice mattered, whose message reached thousands. As her following soared, she began receiving collaboration requests and brand sponsorships. That's when it hit her. She could actually make a living by doing what she loved, right from her phone, her camera, her art. By the time she turned 19, Anastasia had saved enough to leave her grandmother's home and return to St. Petersburg. There, she landed a job at a well-known tattoo studio and moved into her own apartment. She also adopted a new, bolder identity online, rebranding herself as Grishman, a name that soon became widely recognized. With her confidence building, Anastasia began thinking even bigger. She auditioned for a popular Russian reality show, something like Bad Girls Club. But despite her personality and growing fan base, she wasn't selected. The producers said she didn't fit the type of character they wanted. They saw her as too creative, too unconventional. But that rejection didn't shake her. If anything, it pushed her harder. Anastasia threw herself back into her online work. By 2019, at just 23 years old, she had built a name for herself as one of the most in-demand tattoo artists in her city. She was earning good money, mentoring aspiring artists, and even teaching courses in web design on the side. Then she joined TikTok, and that's when things really took off. Her videos spread quickly, and her follower count exploded. Over time, Anastasia's total social media presence topped 300,000 followers across platforms, but that wasn't her final goal. She dreamed of reaching 1 million, and it seemed entirely possible.
She had the talent, the passion, and the momentum. Everything was lining up for her success, until she met a man who would unravel it all. Someone who would not only break her spirit, but ultimately take her life. Who was Dmitry Chernyshov? Dmitry Chernyshov was born on February 15, 1998, in the city of Moscow. His childhood was marked by tragedy. His mother died when he was still very young, leaving behind only faint memories. Not long after, his father remarried. Dmitry was raised by a stepmother who showed him little warmth. He received almost no affection or emotional support throughout his childhood. As a result, he grew up quiet, withdrawn, and shy, retreating into himself and avoiding much of the outside world. His escape? Drawing. Alongside regular school, he began attending a local art studio, where, for the first time, he made real friends. The experience helped him slowly come out of his shell and feel more at ease around people. But as Dmitry entered his teenage years, his personality began to shift. He became more socially active, both in person and online, and started posting frequently to social media. His content ranged from music and poetry to personal reflections, often focused on dark philosophical themes. He would write about life, death, and the human condition, though his writing was often awkward and, at times, unsettling. He once admitted he found peace in walking through cemeteries, saying he enjoyed studying the photos on gravestones, especially of young women, and imagining what their lives had been like. He also posted sketches of his tattoo designs, mostly featuring cars and Japanese kanji symbols. But what drew attention were his posts describing what he considered the ideal partner, focusing not only on personality, but on very specific physical features and age. It felt off, especially because at that point, Dmitry was already in a long-term relationship with Margarita, a girl he'd met back in high school. Margarita shared many of his interests and beliefs, and stood by him through everything. So when Dmitry decided to move to St. Petersburg in 2017, she didn't protest. She led the entire effort. She handled the logistics, buying their tickets, securing an apartment, and helping them settle into their new life. To support themselves, they both took on freelance work, offering services in web design, programming, and whatever odd jobs they could find. Dmitry also had a side passion for car restoration, which he hoped to pursue more seriously. At some point, though it's unclear exactly when, Dmitry made the decision to begin creating adult-themed content. He brought Margarita into the project, and she became both his business partner and on-camera performer. Dmitry took on the role of director, producer, and actor, developing storylines, designing costumes, and managing the shoots, often collaborating directly with Margarita. This content, though controversial and unauthorized, generated a decent income. However, Dmitry controlled all the finances, kept most of the money for himself, and made all the key decisions. Margarita didn't seem to mind. She trusted him completely, followed his lead, and relied on him to steer their path. By 2020, Dmitry had made enough to buy himself a Mercedes-Benz, a symbol of his growing ego, which he proudly flaunted across his social media accounts. It's worth noting that Dmitry had 2 criminal convictions. One was for theft committed before moving to St. Petersburg. The other was for evading mandatory military service, a serious offense that legally barred him from leaving Russia. But that didn't seem to bother him. He acted as though he were untouchable. It was Margarita who first met Anastasia Grishman when she booked an appointment at her tattoo studio. The two women hit it off instantly and became fast friends. Anastasia worked with focus and precision, and Margarita was thrilled with the result. So when Dmitri later decided he wanted a new tattoo, Margarita didn't hesitate to recommend Anastasia, calling her one of the best artists in the city. Dmitri brought in a sketch of what he wanted. Together, he and Anastasia refined the design and scheduled a series of sessions to complete the work. From their very first meeting, there was an undeniable spark between them. During their appointments, what started as casual banter slowly evolved into deeper, more meaningful conversations. They discovered they had much in common. Both had grown up in broken homes, raised by emotionally distant parents. Both had experienced childhoods starved of affection. And both were artistic, passionate about tattoos, anime, and cars, and driven by an intense hunger for fame, no matter the cost. Their connection deepened quickly. They began spending time together outside the studio, attending car shows, tattoo conventions, and anime-themed events. What began as a professional relationship and a casual friendship soon spiraled into a passionate and fast-moving romance. They tried to keep their relationship a secret. After all, Dmitri was still in a committed 5-year-long relationship with Margarita. But it didn't take long for her to figure out what was going on. Margarita deeply regretted ever introducing Dmitri to the eccentric and magnetic Anastasia. At first, she tried to handle the situation calmly. She approached Dmitri with questions and concerns, hoping for honest answers. But his responses were vague, dismissive, and left her feeling even more uncertain. Eventually, she stopped trying to play it cool. Margarita began confronting him directly. She expressed her jealousy, laid down ultimatums, and begged him to end things with Anastasia. Dmitri promised he would, but never followed through. The lies stacked up, and Margarita saw the truth staring her in the face. But still, she couldn't bring herself to let go. She had given up everything for him, left her hometown, joined him in a morally gray line of work, supported him financially, emotionally, professionally. And now he was trading her in for someone else? The situation reached a painful turning point when Margarita discovered that Dmitri had bought Anastasia an expensive car, something he had never done for her. At that point, no one believed his relationship with Anastasia was just professional. It was obvious and humiliating. In a moment of emotional breakdown, Margarita reportedly damaged the car and even threatened to harm herself. But not even that was enough to stop Dmitri. He moved out of the apartment he shared with Margarita and moved in with Anastasia, who was now renting her own home. By then, Anastasia was already a rising star online, with hundreds of thousands of fans following her every move. Her relationship with Dmitri became a hot topic among her followers, and Dmitri, always hungry for attention, started to gain popularity by association. For someone like Dmitri, who had always craved fame and influence, this was everything he dreamed of. And he got it all by becoming Anastasia's boyfriend. Soon he took on the role of her manager, helping with content planning, social media strategy, and the marketing of her online courses. Together they formed a thriving business. Her audience kept growing. Their brand was taking off. But for Dmitri, it still wasn't enough. He eventually convinced Anastasia to take the next step, to join him in creating adult-themed content. He promised her greater fame, bigger earnings, and a stronger brand. And Anastasia agreed. They began filming together, sometimes in rented studios, sometimes in their own home, and distributed their videos across multiple platforms. Her career took a drastic turn, but her popularity continued to skyrocket. Dmitri called her his muse, showered her with lavish gifts, and praised her publicly. But behind the scenes, it was Anastasia who bore the real cost of their new lifestyle, with her image, her reputation, and her emotional well-being. In early 2022, Anastasia received an invitation to appear on the talk show Beyond the Line, where she was asked to share her story and the surprising evolution of her career. She didn't see any harm in it and gladly accepted, expecting a chance to speak her truth. But the episode didn't go anything like she had imagined. Behind the scenes, the producers had a different goal. They wanted to dig up the past, exposing both Anastasia's and Dmitri's personal lives to public scrutiny. They brought Elena, Anastasia's mother, into the studio and asked how she felt about her daughter's work in the adult entertainment industry. She said this was not the life she had envisioned for her daughter, and blamed Dmitri entirely for pulling Anastasia down this path. When Anastasia finally came on stage, she was ready to defend herself and Dmitri. She boldly claimed that appearing in adult films was something she had dreamed of for years, calling it a form of modern artistic expression. She laughed off the moral criticisms from the show's hosts and guests, pushing back against their lectures on how a woman should live. But the episode took a sharper turn when Margarita, Dmitri's ex, appeared as a surprise guest. She spoke candidly about her long relationship with Dmitri and how Anastasia had come between them. Without hesitation, she accused Dmitri of being more interested in Anastasia's fame than in her as a person, suggesting he was using her for clout and financial gain. In closing, Margarita described Dmitri as emotionally and physically aggressive, warning that his partners often bore the emotional cost of his manipulation. When asked whether she was worried her daughter might be living with someone abusive, Elena dismissed the idea. She said Dmitri appeared quiet and harmless, the kind of man who didn't seem capable of hurting anyone. On screen, Dmitri appeared nervous and inarticulate. He mumbled through his words, avoided eye contact, and gave off the impression of someone lost. Viewers were puzzled. Many commented that it was strange, even surreal, to see two confident, successful women fighting over a man who seemed so unremarkable. A few months after the episode aired, where Anastasia had passionately stood by Dmitri, their relationship began to unravel. By this point, Dmitri had completely abandoned his work in tech, relying entirely on Anastasia's income. Worse, he was pushing her to create increasingly explicit content, more often, with little regard for her comfort or well-being. Anastasia felt trapped, emotionally, professionally, and creatively. She made the decision to not only end the relationship, but also leave the country entirely. By then, she had saved enough money to start fresh. She confided in a close friend that she was seriously planning to relocate to South Korea, where she hoped to open her own tattoo studio. She had already begun researching the legal and business steps to make that dream a reality. To prepare, Anastasia started selling off her belongings and braced herself for a final, painful conversation with Dmitri. The breakup was messy. Dmitri understood that if Anastasia left, he'd lose everything: his home, his income, his growing online status. Still, by the end of July 2022, Anastasia finally convinced him to move out of her apartment. Some believe her determination came from a new person entering her life, Carol K. Deason, a popular blogger and influencer. On July 31st, Anastasia and Carol spent the evening together. They had a great time, walking around the city, talking, laughing, simply enjoying each other's company. But just hours after they parted, Carol received a strange message from her. Anastasia told him that this would be their last time seeing each other, and that she didn't want to continue the relationship. Carol was stunned. He tried calling her, but she wouldn't answer. After that night, Anastasia's behavior changed drastically. She stopped seeing people in person. She ignored phone calls. Her only communication came through short, distant text messages, usually telling others that she needed space and wanted to be left alone. Although she continued posting on social media, she stopped doing live streams. The interactive part of her presence, the thing her followers loved most, suddenly vanished. Her mother and close friends were the first to notice the change and to feel that something was very, very wrong. But they had no idea just how bad things were about to get. After July 31st, Anastasia practically vanished. The only sign of her presence was her continued activity online. Then, on August 2nd, one of her close friends happened to run into Dmitry at a small gathering. When the friend casually asked about Anastasia, Dmitry's response sent a chill down their spine. He said, "She asked me to help her disappear, and I did." He refused to give any further details. But in that moment, the friend knew something was terribly wrong. For nearly a week, they stayed silent, paralyzed by confusion, hope, and fear. They waited, praying Anastasia would reach out, that this was some misunderstanding. But by August 9th, that hope had run out. The friend contacted the authorities and told them everything. That same day, police went to Anastasia's apartment. No one answered the door. They forced their way inside. The scene was chaotic. Half-packed suitcases still lay scattered on the floor, and the bed was soaked in blood. In the bathroom, they found her. Anastasia's lifeless body was curled in the bathtub. She was just 26 years old and had been missing for over a week. Her body had already begun to decompose. A medical examiner later confirmed her cause of death: multiple stab wounds to her chest and neck. The evidence suggested she had been attacked while preparing to leave, midway through packing, right before she could escape. Dmitry became the immediate prime suspect. He was arrested the very next day. Here's what investigators uncovered. On July 31st, after Anastasia had spent the evening with Carol Cadeson, she returned home. Shortly after, Dmitry showed up. When he saw the suitcases, the truth hit him. She was leaving him. For good.
Maybe she had even told him about her new relationship. They got into a heated argument, and then something snapped. In a fit of rage, Dmitry grabbed a knife and attacked her.
He later claimed that he panicked and fled, only returning hours later to find her already gone. He said he moved her body into the bathtub, left it there, and then pretended she was still alive by posting from her social media accounts, creating the illusion that she was fine. But that wasn't the end of his lies. After consulting with a lawyer, Dmitry changed his story. This time, he claimed Anastasia had been severely depressed and had asked him to end her life. According to him, he was only helping her. But during a reenactment for investigators, Dmitry was asked what Anastasia's final words were. His answer? "She told me to call an ambulance." That statement completely contradicted his story about her wanting to die. In the months that followed, Dmitry repeatedly returned to the apartment. He blocked vents and sealed cracks to delay the smell of decomposition. He even poured perfume over Anastasia's body to mask the scent. On January 22, 2023, Dmitry pleaded guilty to the murder, but continued to claim it was a form of assisted death. Despite that, in January 2024, he was sentenced to just 8 years in a maximum security prison. At Anastasia's funeral, her mother allowed media crews to film, but only for a fee. This sparked public outrage. Her grandmother, devastated by the loss of her granddaughter, publicly condemned her own daughter for profiting off the tragedy. Anastasia Kamlovskaya, also known as Grishman, lived a life filled with color, talent, ambition, and pain. She inspired thousands and tried to turn herself into a living work of art. But in the end, she became a victim of manipulation, control, and violence. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means the world. If this story moved you, please consider liking the video, dropping a comment, and sharing it. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive. Take care and see you in the next one.